the more I've learned about mental health and all that kind of stuff and how it all works as we're aging and things like that, and I've always been told by a lot of people, when you get in that older age, you need to stay active, and whatever it is you're doing, you need to keep that mind going rather than just sit in your home, watch TV and things like that.
So you're telling somebody who was ambulatory the day before, who broke their hip, and now they had surgery, now they can't go home. And when they do need that level of care, I want to be the best for them.
You know, before I met you, the only thing I knew were nursing homes. Different houses or whatever have different specialties. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of FIP Printing Pros. I am Chris Lockwood, one of your hosts, along with my co-host Josh Dynison here. And today we're joined by my good buddy Brian, who is going to talk a little bit about some healthcare marketing stuff. A couple episodes ago, we had our buddy Eric Carry on, and he was talking to us about hospice and things like that. But you're in a little bit different field, still in the medical, but you do skilled nursing. So I think before we really get into what you do with the marketing and all that, can you explain the difference between, because there's so many different things. You've got skilled nursing, you've got hospice, you've got assisted living facilities, you've got home health.
Yep.
Kind of explain a little bit about the difference in those.
Yeah, so what I specialize in is inpatient skilled rehab, right? So the patients are coming out of the hospital into our facility to get rehab, to get stronger, to go home, right? So a few things that you got is you got home health, right? So home health, the patients are discharging out of the hospital, back home with some home health, physical therapy, occupational therapy, and nursing. So the patient's easier sell, right? The patients are going home. They're going back to where they're used to, the familiarity with where they live, and they just want to go home. My sale is they're coming to a building, inpatient, they're staying with us, and they're getting their rehab inside of a facility. They're not going home. They have family members that have to come visit them. They're kind of inside of a facility, which makes it a little bit tougher of a sell, right? You're trying to get somebody, instead of going home, they're coming to a building. Then once they come to us, there's also assisted living, right? So you have a place where they live, a residence where they live, which is assisted with caregivers. They have med techs that are rounding on the patients, all paid for out of pocket. So it's something that's, a little bit more costly than it is to be, at home. And then you have hospice, right? Which you talked to, I think you met with Carrie, who kind of has hospice, kind of end of life, which they do at home, right? So they do at home hospice, which is inside their residence, wherever that may be. We also do long-term care at our facility. So we do long-term, which is their residence. And we also have hospice come into our building as well.
Okay.
So you have those four kind of facets that are kind of.
So what's the benefits? You said it's a harder sell to get someone to. Now is that up to the patient normally, or is that the doctor that does like who makes that decision?
It just depends the needs, right? So like once they're higher acuity patients, if they have wounds or they have, ailments like broken hips, knees, joints that they can't go home, they can't function, their daily living standards aren't met.
Yeah.
Those are kind of the sales. So you're telling somebody who was ambulatory the day before, who broke their hip, and now they had surgery, now they can't go home, right? Telling somebody that information is very detrimental sometimes to their psyche. You know what I mean? You're dealing with somebody who thinks they can go home, but they just can't manage. The family can't take care of them. They're 85 years old. They don't have the ability to go home, and that's kind of a tough sale. But it's something that they need. And when they do need that level of care, I want to be the best for them. I want to be there for them, let them know that we are here for them, and follow that patient from the time they arrive to the building to the time they discharge, and that's kind of what's going to set somebody apart.
Now, is that your job to go and have those conversations with the patient, with the family, to say, hey, I understand you would be more comfortable at home, but what you really need is X, Y, and Z for these. Is that what you do?
Yeah, so it starts out with the case manager and the physician inside the hospital. So they have that talk initially with the patient. My job is to go in and meet with the patient, meet with the family, kind of answer any questions they may have. Most of the families don't have any idea what a skilled nursing facility is, what we do, and what we specialize in. So I just have to explain to them, what we do, how we do it, about the time frame that they're going to be there, when they're going to discharge and those kinds of things. So I meet with the families, I meet with the patient, try to alleviate any concerns, questions that they may have.
Yeah, I mean, I know, before I met you, the only thing I knew were nursing homes. And nursing homes, just that whole word, it's kind of like the hospice word. Like it has this negative connotation with it. But, what I've learned with knowing you and Carrie and Casey and all of them is there's so many more. Yeah. Like, we group it all together. We're like, it's a nursing home.
It's one, it's one and all.
That's what we think. But I had no idea that different houses or whatever have different specialties.
And the thing is too is nursing home, right? Once you hear that, people think you go there to die, right? The number one thing is, that's where you go to die. That is the furthest thing from the truth, just like it is hospice. I mean, people come and go off long-term care, off hospice, home health. It's just this connotation that's been put out in the community for years, because that's what it was, right? It was a place where you dump your loved ones to go, and that's where they go to pass away, and that's not the case, We're there to rehab, to make people thrive, let their daily living, get it back to where they were at, where they can function and live a prosperous life. That's kind of what we specialize in.
Also, that you can make a whole lot of really nice crochet blankets. So.
Yeah, we do have we have a nice arts and crafts program.
What was that Happy Gilmore?
Keep on knitting.
Yeah. That's what people think. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so my thought process too is with it all is, you think about the more I've learned about mental health and all that kind of stuff and how it all works as we're aging and things like that. And I've always been told by a lot of people, when you get in that older age, you need to stay active, and whatever it is you're doing, you need to keep that mind going rather than just sit in your home, watch TV and things like that. And I would imagine that going into a facility actually probably would keep that brain functioning more, because you guys do activities. There's more people to interact with constantly.
Absolutely.
Whereas if you're just sitting at home just watching your soap operas and whatever,
watching them stories,
Yeah, because what they do is what happens is they get in their recliner, they get stuck in their favorite recliner. They're too weak to get up to go anywhere, right? So what we do at our building, Life Care Center of Ocala, is we specialize in low functioning and high functioning activities. So we have 6 to 8 activities a day. Getting the mind going. It keeps them moving, keeps them motivated. It gets them out of their room. It gets them involved with other people. You know what I mean? And so it makes it a nice, smooth transition for them to kind of keep their body going.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we've been
even the mobility factor, I didn't, that also would factor in, because you probably have your own physical therapy within there too that's keeping them moving instead of just sitting in a chair.
They get in a chair and they get stuck all day, and they sleep in their chair. They don't get up, and they have, then they create ulcers, and it just becomes a nightmare.
Yeah.
They just get weak, they decondition. And that's it's harder to condition at a certain age, right? It's like you want to maintain with what you got.
Yeah, I do deliveries down in the villages, and I always laugh when I see these old cats rolling around in their golf carts. And I was doing a delivery somewhere. I was having a conversation with a woman, and she was at wherever I was at. She was in there getting something or doing something, and I overheard her talking about her husband, and she was like, "Yeah, he was out the door this morning. Oh, it was at one of the hotels. That's where it was.
Oh, okay."
And she was like, "Yeah. Jimmy was out the door at 7:00 this morning. This is his 5th time this week going golfing." And I'm like, dude, if I
lucky life, man.
I know, right? Yeah. And so I couldn't help it. I'm like, how old's your husband? And she's like, 85. I was like, shut up. She's like, no, he golfs 5 days a week. And I'm like, if I golf 18 holes, I'm done for a week.
Oh, dude, yeah, where's me out, man? Thinking about it. Yeah, because we had a lady a couple weeks ago come into our building. She's 81. Walked 5 miles a day, and she rode horses, right? And so it was like she had a horse accident, which is what brought her in. But these people that 81 that are just active, and then you see somebody else who's just 65, and there's just they just sit in their chair, and you see the difference of the mobility, and it is kind of detrimental when you see how they're functioning. You know what I mean? It's tough to see sometimes.
Yeah, I know 35-years old that don't function.
They don't even move. And so keeping the body moving, and that's one of the things we specialize in too, is we do outpatient therapy as well. So we'll have patients that'll come to us, they love the therapy and they want to come back. So they come back in an outpatient setting, which is so the family member or the patient drive themselves back to the building, We do
So they come
therapy.
back to your
They come back
building?
to our building and then they go home, right? So it's that's more also, you get a little bit more therapy that way. And then you can also train. That's typically after kind of a home health setting as well, right? So there's plenty of ways to get therapy to keep them moving, mobile, and keep them moving.
Okay, yeah. So that you guys do both, and you'll have the people that are like long term there, short term there, and then just
Outpatient.
just daily.
Coming in as needed. Typically 2-3 times a week, I'd say for outpatient is kind of typical and standard.
Okay.
For them. So, they'll come on back.
That's what we were talking about in the other podcast with Carrie. Is sometimes they just need an excuse to get out and go to the doctor.
Give them an appointment, right? You give them an appointment. They show up to the doctor early. They show up to their therapy appointments early. There's not much for them to do. Especially you see a lot of family members that aren't in town, right? So you see a lot of elderly live here, but the family is living in New York or somewhere else. So there's really nobody here besides the people they talk to in their assisted living or wherever they may be.
Yeah, Carrie mentioned that, and too, that was a surprise because I think about like, not that I take care of my dad. He's not to that point physically, or he's very takes care of himself, but like he lives with us and things like that. But I guess I picture that, and we always took my grandma. She lived with us in her older age, and so like that's how I factor. I don't think about like the families, that maybe not be right there with them, and how that would even factor into everything,
And then you're working from afar, right? Like you like when you see your mom and dad, like you can kind of see the change in condition, but when they're far away, right, and you have no idea, then you tell them, hey, they went from yesterday or last week, they were fine. And now you all of a sudden see the decline, but you haven't seen your parents. You talk to them, and they're always going to tell you things are fine until they're not. And that's when you see the decline. Then you're so far away. You're trying to decipher, what's really going on, and that's the problem. Unless they're inside of an assisted living facility where there's actual staff that's monitoring them, maintaining their daily living, you don't really have that, eyes on the patient. So it's kind of nice to have somebody, at least when they come to us for rehab, we're at least able to update them, let them know how they're doing,
Yeah. Also, I have to say, because my dad watches this, I'm not saying you're old. I'm just
Dad, you're not old, man, but you're needing some more help, man.
He's not quite to that
Whatever
level.
it may be, right?
He's not quite to that level.
He's gonna say, "Call me next time you need something."
He helps me out at the business all the time. So.
Dad, box those up, man.
So how did let's back up a little bit. How did you get into this business? How did you get into the marketing and sales? What did you do before the healthcare field, and what led you?
So I was a professional golfer by trade. So I played golf at college, and then I was a professional golfer, and then I was in Arizona, Tucson, Arizona, working at a golf course. I was running a golf course called La Paloma Country Club, and I was just not making enough money. I was just looking for the financial side, and a member owned a home health agency and a private duty company. And so I just asked him one day, I just said, hey, man, I said, are you looking for somebody to come help sell and market? And I had no idea what it was about. This was 14 years ago. And so he said, yeah, come on in for an interview. So I got hired on with him. So I did home health and private duty.
What's private duty? That's
Private
what we've been
duty,
talking
yeah.
about.
So private duty is at-home caregivers, right? So you're selling. That's another. It's a pay-for service, right? So it's a service that you pay for hourly, that you sell to people. So if they go home and they need a little bit more help, and they're not ready to be by themselves, they hire a caregiver to come out and help.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was doing home health, which was paid for by insurance, and then if they need a little bit more service,
Private duty is out of pocket.
private duty's out of pocket. Yeah, so you're going to have a few that are going to say, hey, we don't want that because it is expensive. But then they realize they want to be home and they're going to need a little bit more help. So, typically that's kind of a shoe.
So if I'm not mistaken, like some of the services, I think people would be surprised at what all that entails. It could be cooking, it could be cleaning, it could just
Anything.
be coming and hanging out and being my friend for a few hours.
Yeah, absolutely. It's sometimes they just need a companion, right? Like the biggest thing is they're alone, right? Like their loved one passed away. They're by themselves. The family's out of town. They just need somebody. We had somebody that wanted just to sit down for an hour and have a cup of coffee on the front porch. That's all they wanted. They didn't need any more help, but they just wanted to talk to somebody for an hour. That's what they did. So, I mean, those are the simple things you think about, right? Just having somebody to talk to. You get lonely in your own walls, four walls. They trap you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So did you have sales experience or anything before you got into that? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I was working retail, so I mean, I had sold to retail, but nothing medical, nothing clinically. But then I kind of got into the role of learning about home health and learning the systems that were in place. You know, where to go market, how to create relationships, right? Instead of marketing the product that everybody knows, how do you build a brand, right? How do you build your brand to create Brian Roluffs, right? Like, who's Brian Roluffs? Do I follow through with what I say I'm going to do? Am I marketing to the physicians, to the care planners, the discharge planners, those kinds of people? And how do I function, right? Like, am I on time? Am I following up with the case managers, letting them know what I can and can't do? You know?
So when you say you market to the doctors and the case managers and all, like, what is that? Like, give us an idea of what that looks like. Because, I think the term marketing, it's got such a different meaning now than what it used to. Used to, it was like advertisements and print something in a newspaper. Like, that was marketing. Marketing is different now. Like, you got digital marketing, you have print marketing, but there's also something you touched on, which is I go there and I market to them. So what is that?
Yeah, it's like a relationship building, right? Like, so the best way is to create a good relationship with somebody, right? So, like I say, you show up on time, you continuously go back and you meet with the staff, right? So the best way to start doing it is to have a luncheon, right? You put on a luncheon, you let them know kind of what you do, how you're going to do it, and you ask them for a trial, right? You pretty much say, hey, give me a chance, give me one referral. Give me the ability to show you guys what I can do. And slowly over time, you start building relationships, personal relationships. Like in Arizona, I had multiple physicians. I'm new to the Ocala area. I've been here a year, starting to build some good, positive relationships. But it's just being consistent, right? And once you start getting consistent, you start getting the physicians, you start getting case managers, you start getting discharge planners, you start getting them to respect you. You start building that rapport with them, and you start getting referrals that you probably wouldn't normally get just because you have a good relationship with them.
I imagine it's important to know the right people to talk to.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. You don't want to market to the wrong person, right? Like they say, the discharge planners, right? So when you have a surgeon who has surgery, right, their discharge planner is the most important person, who's the person that's discharging the patient for their next level of care, right? That could be home health, could be outpatient, it could be skilled nursing. It could be a multitude of things. So if you're not talking to the right person and you're not getting the information to the person that's making those decisions, yeah, you could be totally, blindsided and marketing to the wrong person the whole time and not getting any referrals.
And with that, you probably have, because obviously I know this because you've ordered some stuff from us for this type of stuff, but you have specific trade shows where you're actually connecting with, rather than like the general public, it's like to your exact, like you're talking about the physicians and things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about, like, I guess what that looks like for you?
Yeah, so pretty much, what we do is we did the trade show. So the one you're talking about was for the Indian Expo. So we had all the Indian physicians that were in town come out. There's about 200 physicians that came out. And so what we did was we did some glasses and some umbrellas, to try to get them to come to our booth. And it gives us the ability to meet with physicians, talk to them in a setting that they already are aware with, right? So they already understand why they're there, what they're doing, and they just want to know about our facility, right? So we were able to sit down and talk to about 200 physicians, got a bunch of contact information. They had their glasses, and some of them took 4. Because they had to have a set of 4, dude, right? You're like, hey, you know what I mean? But hey, that's what we're there for, you know what I mean? And you just get the ability to talk to the physicians, find out what their specialties are, what they're looking for. Are they looking for cardiac, right? A COPD, CHF, those are some big ailments, right? So if there's a cardiologist that's in town, we were able to talk to him and kind of focus on getting our therapy and kind of what we're looking to do in line with the physicians that we're trying to work with, we don't want to go have a dentist, come to our facility. We want to have a cardiologist, right?
Yeah.
Or we want to have a general physician who's in the hospital who's rounding, And so that's kind of an important thing to know who you're marketing to.
Yeah. And I'm assuming, obviously, if you were just going to a general trade show where the general public is there, which I don't even know if you focus on that or not, but you wouldn't have probably went the more higher ticket items that you ended up.
No, that's where your pins, your magnets, your brochures. We don't bring the brochure. We bring information, but it's not really the information base, right? At the physician shows. But when you go to like the general public, where they have magnets they put on their refrigerator, the pens that they use to write, pads of paper, those kinds of things.
Yep.
It's just a general mass information give out. You know what I mean?
It's two different, you know, excuse me. It's for the same facility, but as you were talking, I was kind of envisioning this, but it's two different clientele, really. You have the physician that they don't want to know, you know, are you a nice guy, and do you put flowers in the room, and do we have story time? They want to know, hey, if my patient comes in here that has a brand new hip, you know, what care are they going to get to get that hip better?
Absolutely.
Yep.
The family wants to know, hey, while their hip's getting better, are they going to be entertained? Are they going to be fed? Are they going to be happy? Are they
Private rooms, there's another one, right?
Private
Yeah.
room.
Yep.
And so having to have the two, really separate the two, but market to each in a different way, like that's a as someone who's done sales and everything for a long time, like having to sell the same product to two
different
completely different type of person.
And it could be at the same time too,
Yeah,
right? Like you could have a physician walk up and then you're in that role, right? Where you're explaining what you do, how you do it, how you manage wounds, right? And all these different things. And then you have a family member come up, hey, we just want to know what your rooms look like, right? And you're like, all right, let me jump into that role. Let me get that broshure, right? And you start panicking.
You're describing to the doctor, we're going to change the bandage and clean out all the infection and all that. And the family member's like, ugh.
You start, because they don't have any idea, right? And you have to follow those orders, right? That's another thing too, is following wound orders, right? Like the physicians need to know, like, how do you manage their wounds, especially surgeons, right? Because they're so particular on how their wounds need to be managed. So.
Well, yeah, and well, I mean, you brought that up. So every doctor is going to want things done a certain way. And on a certain timeline. And so when you're going in and talking to the doctors, excuse me, good Lord. Now, I know you're not the one who's going in and doing and providing the care and all that kind of stuff, but you're kind of the liaison between your clinical staff and the doctor to make sure those things get done. So what do you go back and tell the clinical staff, hey, this is what I told the doctor? How does that conversation work?
Well, he'll have on the orders, right? So like if there's specific needs, right? So let's just say there's a surgical site on the right knee, right? A broken knee. He'll have his wound orders. He'll have his surgical notes dictated about what he wants done with that, right? And if there is a problem, if there's an infection, if there's anything, the facility will automatically let the physician know, right? If there's something going wrong. If there's nothing going wrong and there's nothing to report, there's nothing to report, right? But what I do is report back to the physician after the patient will discharge, right? So I bring all the discharge disposition, right? So I'll bring physical therapy notes, I'll bring nursing notes, and I'll go back to the physician. I'll drop off everything to them so they can see where the patient came in at and where the patient went home at, right? So they can see the growth of the patient, how they're doing, how they managed inside the facility. And that way they have a better idea, right? And that's what you're gonna build your trust on, right? How do you report back, right? They care about outcomes, right? How long were they there for? Did they have any problems? Did they go home okay? And are they healthy? Are they better than they were when they got there? You know?
Is that standard, or is that just something that y'all do?
You know, we'll give them, we'll discharge, typically they'll give them to the patient, but I like to give them to the physician and make sure they have a 2-week follow-up appointment, right? I want to make sure that they know they have a time, and that I want to know that they have the information, right? So I just do that on my own accord. I don't know if everybody does that. I don't think they do, but you know, I like to set myself apart a little bit and kind of make sure that I'm getting FaceTime too with the physician, right? Let them know that I'm coming. And eventually, the more times they see my paperwork come across, they're gonna know, hey, this guy's on top of his game. He follows his patients, and that way they start building trust and rapport with me.
Well, it also, I mean, the biggest thing with that too is because with the doctors, I mean, they like that track record too. Like if they have any bad outcomes, that hits them pretty well. Even if it's on the back end, wound type of thing, you know. Even though it may have been, not saying you guys, but whoever's got the care may have been the one that made the mistake.
Absolutely.
It still will follow back to the doctor ultimately that it would look bad on them if something happens on that
Well,
side.
that can also affect your ability to get future referrals too.
Correct. That's what I'm
Yeah,
saying.
they will ban. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
they will specifically say you are not going to XYZ facility because of this reason. I've had 3 patients, and I tell you what, they don't forget.
Yeah.
When there's a mess up, they don't forget. They don't remember all the success stories, or, you know what I mean? But they do remember the patients that are messed up on it, had to be revisions. You know what I mean? Like,
Well, that's where you going back and reminding them of all the success stories is going to help.
Absolutely.
help you, because it's not, hey, not just the bad ones, but here's the
good cases.
good
Yeah.
cases too.
Yeah.
Well, and also there's a nature of the beast that situations will arise when surgery is involved and things like that, and
Yep.
infections that are always a possibility and different things like that, even if you do everything properly.
Absolutely.
So having just that, like, hey, listen, we're going to be on top of it. If this pops up, we let you know immediately. You know, all that type of stuff is key.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you know, I think being transparent's an important thing, right? Like when things do go wrong, you have to be able to own that
Yep.
and let them know what you're doing different, right? Like what happened, what are you doing different, and how we're going to move forward, right? Because if you don't own it and you try to hide it, it's only going to get you in more trouble down the road, because it will always come out. You know what I mean? The care level of the patient, if there's something that went wrong, it will always come out, whether they're in the hospital a week later or a day later. So I think owning it and letting the physician know, you know, this is where we're at. But there's so many good success stories, I think, that they can get in their head to be like, hey, look, 95% of the time there's no problems. You know what I mean? At 5% of the time, or whatever it may be, one patient here or there, you know, this is what we did to rectify that. And it really was to no tune of us. And that's kind of what we want them to know, right?
Yep.
How we handle bad and good situations.
There's also, with what you guys do, is there's a human element involved, and anytime human element is involved, there's always things that can go wrong.
There's always a risk, man.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
I think when you look broadly at what we're talking about right now, you can apply this to any business, any situation. You know, police interactions, you know, 99% of them are positive. You got that 1% that goes wrong. In business, you know, 99% of the stuff that we print or that we send out of the shop is just fine, but there's page 67 of some 300-page book. There's one
black spot in the corner.
You know, so when you look at the grand scheme of things, I think whether it's in marketing or whether it's in business or whatever, the major overall point here is you got to take the good with the bad, but communication is so important.
Absolutely. And I tell you, family members respect that too, right? Because like when they're not there, right, or they're far away and they just hear mom's back in the hospital, well, let me explain to you kind of what's going on with mom, right? Like, let me explain it to you, let you know what's going on. And if there is anything that followed our facility, we always call the family immediately from the facility, right? But it's that communication, follow-up, like let them know, hey, look, this is what happened. And if it was a mistake on our part, you own that, right? And I think when you own things, it tends to lead to success, right? Because that way you can learn and grow from it. And that's really the only way to really learn and grow is to have a mistake, you know, here and there.
or at least not getting the I'm not sure what happened type of thing
Yeah.
instead of just saying this is what happened,
or I don't know, but let me find out and I will get back to you, and then you follow up, right?
Exactly.
And that's kind of as a liaison, that's kind of what I do, right? As a patient care coordinator kind of position, right? You're like, I'm talking to both the doctor, letting them know, letting the physician or the patient know, kind of just bridging that gap. And I think that's kind of the most important thing is being a solid bridge that communicates well. Because if you don't communicate, man, I tell you what, they'll run over you.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
So what other kind of things do you do in terms of marketing? You do the face-to-faces, you do, you know, the networking. I know I've been to a couple of networking events with you.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we participate with a lot of networking out in the community, trying to get involved with the Chamber of Commerce here. So we did sign up for the Chamber of Commerce to try to start hosting some events at our facility. So that's going to be another avenue that we can utilize. We got involved with the Alzheimer's Association. So I know we had a golf tournament. You know, you guys did the stuff for us, the signs and everything, you know, last month. And we're getting involved. You know, I do a lot with Carrie, with Gentiva Hospice. You know, we do a lot of events. So I know they have a bike ride coming up on September that we're going to get involved with. So, Yeah, just try to get involved as much in the community, right? Try to get community awareness.
So you're one building, right? How many patients can you house?
So we have 120 beds. We do long-term and we do short-term. So, we try to split the mix as much as possible. But so we have 120 beds total.
Okay. How many, I'm just curious, because like I said, I do deliveries all over from Ocala to the villages to the whole area. How many, so now I can't remember what, it's a skilled nursing facility.
That's where we are, yeah.
How many other skilled nursing facilities are there?
Oh, God. Probably have 10 to 12 in the area for skilled nursing. And then you have, you have Encompass, which is like an inpatient hospital. And then you have a bunch of home healths, you know what I mean? But for our specific, we have about 10 to 12.
How do, I guess, education is important, like educating the doctors and the discharge coordinators and all those people. Like, how do you educate them on, hey, here's specifically what we do, so that they can then find, when they have the patients that need that particular thing, how do you go about educating them?
That's kind of the outcome-based marketing, right? Yeah. So like that's kind of what we do. So success stories, right? So like we had a gentleman who was paralyzed, and they said we'll probably never walk. He walked out of our building. He was there for 4 months, and then the family paid out of pocket, right? So he's a success story on our webpage, and just getting those stories out, right? Like that's really the gist of it, right? And so anytime you have an ability, and sometimes the doctors don't even know their patients are with us, right? So for me, if I have somebody that's discharged from the hospital, they're not always going to let that primary care physician know or the surgeon know what's going on. Yeah, they don't let them know all the time. So they don't know where their patients are at. They just go out into the world and they kind of come back to them and they follow up and they have no clue what's going on. Interesting. So that's why I started saying, if I bring in the outcomes, right, where they came in at, or they started at 3, now they're at an 8. Here's what we did. Here's how they did, you know what I mean? And give them the information so they can actually see it's tangible. And that way they know what's going on. And eventually that kind of marketing, right? When you give them outcome-based marketing, positive and negative, right? It goes both ways. And hopefully eventually that starts to change people's...
I didn't even think, because most of the time marketing is geared towards, here's what we do. Yeah. Here's what we can do for you.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have testimonials and, you have all that kind of stuff, but...
Statistics.
Statistics, but it kind of sounds
generalized statistics, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it kind of sounds like that hits a little bit different, especially when the person who's basically ordering your service. Mm-hmm. I could see why they wouldn't necessarily know, because you have the discharge care coordinator who's usually like
who handles that
stuff. Surgeon just put a hip in. He ain't got time to figure out what.
I promise you, he doesn't. You know what I mean? But he does remember where not to go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yes. He remembers what not to do, but also when you get to the point of like what to do, he's got so many surgeries. Let's say he's got 6 lined up today. You know what I mean? He is not worrying so much about exactly where the patient's going. Like that's why he has people that discharge planners, and he has staff, office managers, and staff to manage that. And it's kind of a big thing, right? It's like, how can you manage their patients and let them heal and get the information back to them, It's one thing with assisted livings too, right? So we'll get a patient from an assisted living in town, and I always report back to that assisted living, hey, look, we have your patient here inside of our facility, whether we knew prior or not, right? That way they can come follow their patient, because what happens is that patient will have a discharge and nobody will know where their patient's from, and they might go to another assisted living and they might try to
that would be
so they just scoop up a patient from somebody else, right? And so you start to just, try to communicate with other facilities, right? Assisted livings. Hey, look, come see your patient, right? They're here. That way now they know where their patient's at, because they don't always know where they go either.
Could you imagine living in an assisted living facility, falling down and breaking a hip, getting surgery, going to Life Care Center
for the recovery,
and then you end up in some other place...
Because you don't know.
It would be like just someone randomly dropping you off at a different house.
Yeah, and you got to pay. And then the thing is, you can get confused, right? You still you pay for it out of pocket, so you'll have a chance to kind of know about it. But if you're unhappy, right? So like if you're unhappy in assisted living, they haven't had a chance to try to rectify that, right? they'd be quick to switch, right? People are always quicker to switch because they have the sale coming at them about, what the positives over here.
Yeah.
But if you haven't given somebody the chance to rectify that, right, then now you're doing a disservice to that patient and the facility. So that's why we try to partner, right? Try to get these partnerships with key referral sources, so that way we can communicate with them and say, hey, look, Chris is here. Come see him. Hey, Chris, how's everything going? Oh, we love it. Everything's great. Now you have it chalked up, right, to where you're coming back.
So how do you track, from a marketing standpoint, how do you track all of the, because there's got to be, I couldn't even imagine how many surgeons there are in this area. I mean, we got a huge retirement community in Marion County, like massive.
Yep.
So how do you track, and there's a ton of assisted living facilities, how do you keep up with all of the different ones that you partner with, or you take referrals from? And I imagine you also share referrals with people that you can't help. Like, you got to know the other people in your position, or you got to know the Carry X with Gentiva, the hospice. You got to know the at home, because when they leave you, they might still need care. So you got to have the at home.
Absolutely.
Care. So how do you possibly track?
Well, really, just putting them, I write everything down. I put it into a spreadsheet, right? Like kind of where referrals are coming from, so I can track and trend kind of where they're all coming from. And then outcomes, right? So like in the field with other marketers, right? So you have home health agencies that you just know are good, good facilities, right? Good home health agencies, and they have good staff, and you hear positive outcomes, right? And those are the people that you're working with, right?
We happen to know someone who is the admin for probably
for Trilogy Home Health. I know the new administrator. She's phenomenal. Her name is Casey Allen. Roluffs, by the way.
That's his wife. If you got to
That is my wife. Yeah. So she. But with that being said, though, is she takes ownership, right? So I know her personally, but also, I know other people that take pride in their job, right? And it's kind of like she owns her job, she owns the patients, she owns the referrals, and she wants to make sure that everything's taken care of. So when you have good companies in town, right, and you have good assisted livings that communicate with you, those are the marketers, the reps, the people that you want to associate with. So if you have something fail at home, they're coming back to us, and when they're done with us, they go to another home health, and you have good partnerships, right? You know that.
Well, I think the people, the families, the patient, they rely a lot on you to know who to refer them out to, too. It's not even just from the business side of things, having those relationships. It's for the benefit of the family and the patient in the end as well, having those relationships.
Yeah, and you want to give them, they need choices, right? So you want to give them 3 choices, right? 3, 4 to kind of talk to, that you would recommend, because most of the time, it's patient choice, right? So the patient has a choice to choose anything in any company that they want, right? So it's always patient choice first, and then they'll ask for suggestions, right? So at the end of the day, they're like, I have no clue. What would you recommend? We say we work well with X, Y, and Z company. We need hospice, we work well with X, Y, and Z. And that's kind of what we do. If they ask for that, we have those referral sources, and then I give them direct contacts, right? Instead of giving them a generic number, here, call Carriac. Gentiva Hospice, here's his phone number. He'll answer any question. And they may not even need hospice, or they may not even need home health, but it's somebody to talk to that can answer those questions,
Yeah.
And here's one level deeper on this, and this is what blew my mind, and this is how Brian ended up on the podcast, is because we were talking about the networking and the marketing and all that, and I was talking to Casey about it. When they go into the home health, Here's how much deeper that networking and that referral goes. They also go in and look at the house and say, you need this set up for safety. You need this thing installed in the shower, and this thing installed by the toilet, and you need this front porch is a disaster. This is a trip hazard waiting to happen. Mm-hmm. And now they have recommendations for contractors and stuff like that that can come in and make sure the house is safe, and so the referral business, the referral part of marketing and the networking, it goes so much deeper than just that, and just off camera, what y'all don't see is when we record these, and you kind of mentioned it earlier. where Carrie on the last podcast needed some electrical work done.
Oh, yeah.
You know, there was also a conversation that I overheard about when the elderly get taken advantage of through different things.
Yeah.
And your wife was here, is like, hey, if you come across something like that, please reach out. You know, I can provide some education, you know, those kind of things. So when you're doing your networking, when you're doing your marketing, I think a theme that we've heard over the last, I don't know, however long we've been recording these podcasts, you know, 3 or 4 months, is the networking is so much more valuable. Your network is so much more valuable than whatever it is you're trying to sell. Now, the networking is not going to necessarily put the money in your pocket in terms of sales, but it's those referrals, it's those, you know, those connections, those contacts, because you never know where it's going to come from.
And that's why
You go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the things too, right? Even going to the Chamber of Commerce, right? Like you're dealing with everybody from pressure washing to roof repair to, you know, garbage removal to disposal, all these things, right? And you think to yourself, you're like, that has nothing to do with the healthcare field, right? Mm-hmm. But you have people that are hoarders, right? That need to sell their house and they don't have any contacts. Like I had a lady from North Carolina who was the cousin of somebody that came in long-term care that he was a hoarder and they had no clue. So I had to get a trash removal company that I knew to come out and help, right? So you have these people that are in contacts and being that referral source, right? You start to build trust and rapport with people.
Yep.
And that's something you want. You want to have people that are trustworthy, that you like, that are good referrals. And it starts to put them at ease, right? Like when you start to help them in those tough situations.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And I get that from the chamber standpoint, and the like getting those different people you may not necessarily need at the moment, but also, like you said, you have your tight circle in your normal personal life that you have, that those are your people. But then outside of that, you have just all these different connections that can ultimately help you get to, like, even so many times in business so far in my career as being in what I do as an entrepreneur, it's not even this person that I met. It's this person that knows this person, and sometimes that even knows this person that ends up getting the connection that I needed to do what I needed to achieve.
Absolutely.
And so, like, it's not even sometimes people, I think they take too much. When you go to those networking events, sometimes people are like there's some people that are just like, oh, nope, you can't help me. I'm gonna go find somebody else that can
pick and choose who they talk to. And
I can't say I've never been that person.
We've all been in that.
You gotta have a plan, and you like who you're trying to target. Don't get me wrong, that's always the plan, but also I'll even say from things in our business. So like we have some customers that only do business cards, which don't make us much money, you know, and just doing business cards, you know what I mean? And sometimes I know it can be frustrating go through because it's a lot of stuff just to build out a business card, just for the little bit of money that comes from it. And then, but I always tell everybody, I'm like, listen, just remember that could end up maybe this business won't turn into something that's going to give us a bunch of money, but this relationship you're building with this person could end up turning into
and a lot of times you don't even know it.
A lot
of times it'd be like, you'll get a phone call will come in. It's like, hey, I need to get shirts made.
Yeah.
Right. We made those shirts for Life Care Center of Ocala, and it's not because they were like pulling up Google and being who's the best. It was because
the relationships.
Yeah, it was the relationships or. You know, we print business cards from somebody, and somebody, especially if they're the really cool ones, and then they pick them like, who did this? Like, where did you get these business? Oh, yeah, it was printed, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if they'll do this and this. And we're like, somebody emailed me, or not emailed me, there was a message on LinkedIn the other day, and they were like, yeah, we have in-house printing, and we do this and that. But then they were like, can y'all do keychains? I'm like,
duh.
What do you want it to look like? And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, I'm literally hoping a bottle opener that looks like a parrot, and I have a keychain that looks like a fishing lure. What kind of keychain?
Here's a book at 10,000, right?
But they don't know those things because, you know, they think, oh, well, they just do business cards.
Yeah.
Well, and then what you do is slowly drop in other things, right? Like you drop off those business cards, you could drop off a flyer for something else, right? Do some advertising, marketing, and let them know what you can do, right?
Yep.
And you start building that trust, and that's kind of how it happens with every field, right? It's just you build a rapport, you show up on time, and you treat every customer like it's the most important customer, right?
Yep.
Whether it's one pack of business cards or 15,000 pack of business cards, you treat them exactly the same, and that's how I do for my patients, right? You treat everybody like they're important because that's their loved one, and that's the most important person in this world, and that's the most important in everything. So you treat them with all that respect and follow up, and everybody's going to call you. You're going to get millions of phone calls. But you treat every one of them the same. So
since you brought that up, a question popped into my head. How do you handle the ones that you can't help?
Those are the tough ones, right? Like the thing that we see here is long-term care, right? Like there's so many long-term care patients that need placement that we can't help, and that's the tough part. Really, just kind of being an advocate and kind of letting them know what other options are out there. But those are the tough ones. There's not many beds for long-term care, and that's the hardest, is just trying to get them as much information and find out financially what they're able to afford.
Yeah, sometimes it's affordability. Sometimes
money.
It's insurance. Like I know not every place takes every kind of insurance, availability, bed space.
Yeah, there's so many facets that come into it, and there's not much you can really do. I mean, Marion County Senior Services kind of provides some services that I work with Mary over there. But they provide a little bit of service to try to help find placement. But it's just tough, man. I mean, those are the hardest ones to try to deal with,
Yeah.
But that's where having that network is so important.
Absolutely.
Yes, exactly.
Have those contacts and try to at least give them to somebody else that can maybe help them with that placement. And like I say, if they don't have, like, you only have so many days allowed for skilled nursing. So if they run out of days, you're allowed 100 days for every episode.
Really?
Yeah, so you get 100 days of skilled nursing availability, and then you have to be out of the hospital for 60 days total for those days to reboot, right? So some people will use all their days, right? 100 days total, and then they have no more days for inpatient rehab. That's where you have to utilize home health, or you have to utilize, another facet to try to get them the help that they need while they need help, Yeah. And that's kind of a tough challenge too, is trying to get that set up, but yeah, just trying to partner. Like I say, having those relationships, say, hey, I got somebody, I need some help, and really utilizing that.
So what we're going to wrap this up pretty quick. What do you think the most, like, if you could just magically let all of the physicians, all of the care providers, all of the care coordinators, like if there was like that one thing you wish all of them knew, what would that be?
That we care, right? Honestly, we care. I care. I love each and every one of my patients, my residents, good and bad, right? Like I take the good with the bad, but I follow through with what I say I'm going to do, right? And that's one of the main things that I think that everybody should know, right? Is that I own every patient. I take every patient's like it's my own relative, and I own it, right? And so that's kind of one of the things that everybody does skilled nursing, right? Everybody can have a physical therapist, right? But it's how do you own and treat every patient, right? And that's where I set myself apart. Follow up with the physicians, follow up with the family members. I talk to them, I work with them, and that's kind of what I do different. So I would just say care, right? I care. Yeah. Whatever it takes to make the job.
It's in the name Life
right?
Care Center.
Yeah, and our motto is whatever it takes, right? So we will do whatever it takes to make somebody happy at the end of the day. And that's kind of our motto, right? Is whatever it takes. So,
I love it.
Yeah, but I appreciate you guys, man.
Let's wrap it up with it there. Go ahead.
Is there any best way to get a hold of you guys? Refer over to you?
Yeah, so I have an email. It's Brian, Brian _ Roluffs, ROLUFFS @lcca.com. You can email me there. My phone number 352-804-8449. If you have any questions regarding skilled nursing or availability, you can call me anytime.
Awesome, man. Appreciate it. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Everyone, please make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. If you're interested in coming on, talking about what you do, whether it's business, marketing, any of those kind of things, hit us up. Let us know. We'd be happy to have you as a guest. Until then, Let's grow together.
It's time to step up, yeah. It's grind time, no more letting up. No, running faster, further, no more running up. Yeah, giving my all, no more giving up. Listen to me, step, it's time to step it up.